Polls show the majority of voters want to see a lot more from their commander-in-chief than they have so far. Right now, his approval rating is at 42% in the latest ABC News and Washington Post poll. And in a survey from NBC News and Wall Street Journal, 40% approve of the job the president is doing. So this is the lowest approval rating of any U.S. president in his first 100 days since polling began. So what is the president planning to do about it? Take a look at what he has planned for his week. A lot. On top of all this, he says he will announce his tax reform plan on Wednesday, and he's pushing Congress to come up with an Obamacare replacement and agree on a spending bill by Friday. Let's talk more about this with our panel. Joining me, Democratic strategist Jonathan Ticini and CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Alice Stewart. Alice, a senior administration official, tells CNN there is now less pressure from the White House to repeal and replace Obamacare by this week. Smart move?
I think so. I think it's certainly something that they learned the first time. You don't put a timeline on something that's so important. The good news is this week we did hear that, at least in terms of the House GOP members, we had the moderate members of the GOP, the Tuesday group, and the more conservatives in the House Freedom Caucus did meet, had some good conversations. They're expecting to get some pen to paper in the next few days, which is a good step forward. But they obviously have to get more buy-in amongst the full GOP. But I think the fact that they're still putting this as a high priority, look, all of them ran and won on repealing and replacing Obamacare. They need to do it right. They need to do it that will have a lower cost and greater access to health care. That's something that the president campaigned on and plans to keep his promise, and also members of Congress as well.
Now, Jonathan, the president tweeted today that these polls are pretty good news for him, and here's some of the reasons he thinks that. If you peel back the numbers, you find only 2% of Trump voters regret their vote. 96% who voted for Trump said they think they did the right thing. Is that bad news for Democrats?
No, because the majority of people who have been polled in the polls that you showed reject Donald Trump, disapprove of him. That would include Democrats and, most importantly, independents. I think there's a very good reason for that. Since the election, people have watched Donald Trump now for almost 100 days. They now remember that in the election he was a racist and a bigot, and that piled on, starting with the travel ban, the one that was stopped, and then he continued to put on another one. But I think the most important thing, Anna, that strikes me is that over the course of the entire campaign, particularly the media tried to build up Donald Trump as a successful businessman. And what they didn't focus on is that he built his business over two things. One is bankruptcy, which is failure, and basically borrowing money from many people and failing to the tune of billions of dollars. And number two, defrauding people, thousands of people that he cheated and defrauded. That was brought out in a report by USA Today. So what that means is now people are looking at him trying to translate that failed business into trying to run a government, and he's a completely failed executive. He does not know, he's incompetent. And that's what I think Democrats and particularly independents now see very, very clearly.
Jonathan, I think some of those things you just commented on are debatable. So, Alice, I'll give you a chance to respond.
Certainly. I think first and foremost, look, I respect Jonathan's opinion, but I strongly disagree. I think the media has done more of a job of demeaning the president. Look, the Washington Post poll here, all it talks about on the front page is about low approval ratings, the least popular president. But if you really break down this poll and look at the crosstabs and what it really says, as you indicated, Anna, almost 100% of people say they don't regret their vote. More than 70% of his base say he's doing the right thing when it comes to jobs. And if you jump to page 14,
why does he only have a 40%? Why does he only have a 40% approval rating?
One more thing. Well, on that note, one more quick thing to point out. If you also look at another crosstab of this, he beats Hillary. If the election was held today, he beats Hillary Clinton by 3%. So people still have a stronger opinion, more favorable opinion of Donald Trump than they do Hillary Clinton. So that's something
Alice,
to really keep in mind.
Alice, why does he only have a 40% approval rating?
Hey, governing is hard, and he's made some tough decisions. And sure, the key is he has been a very outspoken candidate. He's a very outspoken president, and you're going to ruffle some feathers. Look, he never ran to be Mr. Popularity. He ran to be president of the United States.
And I think what people, and I would say that the reason that so many people disapprove of his conduct and his job in the Oval Office is he's been incompetent. He actually has failed to do much other than scare the crap out of people all around the world with things like the missile strike in Syria, which was of no consequence, and then declaring that he was going to send a fleet out to to North Korea, which was actually going the wrong way. So people look at this guy and say, this guy is scary. And they wake up every day thinking, am I going to wake up to a new war? What's he doing about jobs? He's been a complete failure.
But Jonathan, it's worse for Democrats, according to these poll numbers. 67% think the Democratic Party is out of touch. Why? What are Dems doing wrong?
Well, I've been about as critical, and I wrote a piece on CNN.com on Friday. I've been very critical of the Democratic Party, and I think that goes back to, frankly, a decade-long failure to actually have a full-throated, if I can say, a Bernie Sanders agenda that reaches out to people, addresses why people feel that there's class warfare in this country, that billionaires have taken over the country, that in fact Donald Trump is now going to enact a tax bill, we assume, in the next coming few weeks, along with Paul Ryan, that again shovels a huge amount of money over to the rich. And if the Democratic Party doesn't take a very strong stand, that they are populist, that they stand for the person, they're against the billionaire class, they will continue to suffer.
No,
All right,
I think it's
Jonathan
important.
Tessini, Alex Stewart, we got to leave it there. You got the first question, so we'll let Jonathan have the last word. Thanks to both of you. Up next,
Thank you.
President Trump has another slate of executive orders to sign this week. These have to do with energy independence. What's the impact? CNN investigates just ahead.
Run, run, run!
Ruby Tuesday's fresh flavors.
Starting at just $9.99. Got that garden bar on my mind. Chicken and salmon looking so divine. But the Primavera